We're searching for the graves of as many Revolutionary War soldiers as we can find.
I wanted to find out how many Revolutionary War soldiers were buried in not just Harris County, but Columbus, Taylor County, Talbot County, and I've been researching them. James Cameron was born in Scotland. He came to America with several other groups of people, and he settled in South Carolina. 1776, he joined the South Carolina line, served in the Revolutionary War for 2 years and 2 months until Charleston fell. John Fennessy was born in 1760 in Cork County, Ireland. He served in the South Carolina line, and after that he received a bounty grant here in Georgia.
Today we're in Harris County, Georgia. I'm joined by Mrs. Linda McCardle, and we are at the Rehoboth Cemetery here in Catala, and we're actually here to look at 2 Revolutionary War soldiers.
Well, this is Lieutenant William Norris. He was born in 1757 in North Carolina, and in 1777 he enlisted as a private in the North Carolina line. He quit after about 3 months, went back in 1781, but he was a lieutenant at that time. He served another 3 months and he went back in 1782 as a private. But he ended up serving over 2 years. So he was involved in the Battle of Brier Creek, which is right on the Georgia-South Carolina line. He was also in Camden County, South Carolina battle. But the interesting thing about Brier Creek is it was a catastrophic American loss. Because of that battle, they lost control of Georgia. The British took Georgia, and they gave them a really good advantage going into South Carolina. It was around a little community called Paris Mill, and it was one of the biggest industrial complexes and sites in Georgia at that time, so they lost that. And after the battle, General John Ash was court-martialed for cowardice because a lot of the men said that he jumped on his horse and went running away, rode as quickly as he could away from the battle. He was not convicted of cowardice, but he was convicted of losing control of his camp. After the Brier Creek battle, I found an interesting little tidbit. After the Revolutionary War, Paris Mill was sold to a young man named Seaborn Jones, who was grown up in Augusta. So Seaborn Jones bought this complex, but later you would find Seaborn Jones in Columbus. He was a politician in Columbus, very wealthy man in Columbus, and he built a little house called St. Elmo. So today, he named it El Dorado, but today it's known as St. Elmo. So he bought this Paris Mill, but then he ended up in Columbus. So after the war, in 1790, William Norris married Nancy Watkins. They moved to Wilkes County, Georgia. This couple had 12 children, but eventually they ended up in Columbus and became members of the Rehoboth Baptist Church. And he died in 1844, and his obituary was published in the Christian Index, and it said, "Another revolutionary gone."
So I've actually been to the Battle of Brier Creek battlefield, and it was just kind of pine woods and a memorial in the middle of pretty much nowhere. But I remember it said somewhere out there about all of the soldiers that are still in those woods, that were never made it home.
Huge loss.
Yeah. And how did St. Elmo get its name?
Augusta Jane Evans. She was an author. She was also related to Seaborn Jones, and she wrote a book called St. Elmo, and after the book was published, because she wrote it there at El Dorado, they started calling El Dorado St. Elmo, and it was because of her. During her lifetime, she published a great many books, and so she was very, very popular at that time. This is William Swan. He was born in 1758 in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. He enlisted June the 1st, 1780 as a private in the North Carolina Troop of the Riflemen, and he served for 3 months. I went back, I kept thinking, why are they only 3 months? That's what they would have initially served for. And I guess they would go home, work around the house, and then go back and re-enlist. But he re-enlisted in 1782 as a private in the company of the Light Dragoons, and he served to the end of the war with this company. So in 1790 he marries Rachel Brown, and they moved to Harris County around 1830. They only had 4 children, but before that they had lived in Morgan County, Jasper County, and Newton counties. So after the Revolutionary War, they started moving this way because they were getting land grants. The government had no money after the Revolutionary War. They couldn't pay the pensions to their soldiers, so they gave them land. So they would move. I guess they kept moving to see where the best land would be, but they ended up here in 1830. He also, during the war, he ended up in New York. I don't know how he ended up in New York, but he was taken prisoner at Fort Montgomery. And in his pension, he wrote that they treated him very badly, but they let him go after 3 months. So he went home and went back to his company after that. He and his wife lived here. He died in 1849. She died in 1852. And they were also members of the Rehoboth Baptist Church here. Their names are in both these men's names are in the original roster of the Rehoboth Baptist Church when it was formed in 1839. So my connection to them is that they were going to church with my 3rd great-grandfather, Osborne Ely, who lived right up the road there. So I've always been interested in this cemetery, but none of my family are buried here. But they did go to church with these people.
So we are just up the street in Pine Mountain Valley at the old Bethel Baptist Cemetery, looking for another Revolutionary War soldier buried out here. And we just came into the old section.
This is Ezekiel Brown. He was born in 1763. This says 69, but the record's 63, 69. He served in the Virginia Continental Line, and he drew land in the 1838 Cherokee Lottery, and as a Revolutionary War veteran, that was his payment. He married Elizabeth Merritt in Greene County, Georgia, and they lived there for several years before he moved into Harris County. They had 8 children, but their children did not settle in this area. At the end of his life, he developed dementia. And in the Harris County inferior court records, there's a case where the family was fighting over he had become fairly wealthy, and the family was fighting over his land and things, but he died. And he was a member of the Bethlehem Baptist Church, and his wife is buried beside him in the unmarked grave. So he died in 1863. So he was almost 100. And the thing I've noticed about these Revolutionary War soldiers, they lived into their 80s, their 90s. Over in Taylor County, there's a Revolutionary War, Daniel Watley. He lived, they said, to 101. Oh, wow. And he was riding his horse the day he died. But he died, and his family moved out of this area. So.
All right, so we are in Talbot County, Georgia now, still on the hunt for Revolutionary War soldiers, and we've come to this actually pretty neat old cemetery up on a hill here. This is the Neal family cemetery, and we think that there's probably not a Revolutionary War soldier up here now, no. But we're gonna figure it out. So sometimes I know from experience that researching Revolutionary War soldiers can kind of be difficult. There's some misinformation out there.
Oh yes,
and that sort of thing.
I found that out.
Yeah, when it comes to Revolutionary War soldiers, and this is one that you had in Talbot County. Well, not necessarily this one, but there's one you had in Talbot County that was listed as a John Neal.
John Neal.
And he was born, what, 1740?
1745, and died in, that's why I was thinking 1844, I think they said that he died. So I'm thinking he is fairly old, but he was supposedly buried in Talbot County. He moved his family to Talbot County. This may be some of their relatives, but Now I'm not sure.
Yeah, we were looking before we came up here, and I looked up and found a list from the Sons of the American Revolution, from some list that they'd printed, that listed John Neal with that birth date, 45, 55,
Yeah.
something like that, and this death date of
Yes.
this guy here. But this guy's birth date is not
No.
not the same. So
Could be his son, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure. I'll have to go back and do a little more research.
let's find our John Neal here. This is Martha, wife of John Neal. Yeah.
And here's John Neal.
Okay. All right, so this is in memory of John Neal, who was born in Warren County, Georgia, October 28, 1795, died in Hamilton, Harris County, Georgia, March 13th, 1855. Behold, I make all things new. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son.
That's very pretty, isn't it?
It is. So if he was born in 1795, which, I mean, it looks like he was on the census in 1850, it being, I think, 54 years old, and that would align with that. Now, sometimes you'll see people that didn't know their exact birth date, and you'll see discrepancies like that on the census, but 40 years is
That's a long time.
yeah.
Yeah,
But his father's certainly old enough to have been in the
yeah.
Revolutionary War. But it's a neat little cemetery
It is.
out here.
It looks like someone is taking care of it.
There's only 2 Revolutionary soldiers, or 3 Revolutionary
Three.
soldiers that are listed in Talbot County, Georgia. Dickerson Lumpkin and John Neal is listed, but who's the other one?
My mind just went.
I went blank too. I've got. Where's my phone at? Shoot, we just talked.
I know that. I don't know what's wrong. I guess George Menifee.
Menifee. Yeah. Okay. So
George Menifee.
George Menifee is also out here. So those are. I guess we still have. If there's a John Neal out here from the Revolutionary War, we still have to find him.
You have to find him.
But we're searching for as many Revolutionary War soldiers as we can find. And what is your you have a personal project with the Revolutionary War soldiers, right? I mean,
Yes, I'm just trying to document. I have my blog,
Yeah.
and I'm documenting all of them for our 250th anniversary this year. Just my personal project that I started.
That's right.
But
Awesome. Well, we're going to keep looking.
I'm going to keep looking.